Okay, welcome back to this episode of your BC Real Estate Guide for everyday buyers, sellers, and investors. Today we are joined by CJ Christensen.
Hi.
And Donna.
Hello.
Both from my team, and we will be discussing assignments. We'll be discussing what is an assignment, what type of people buy assignments, potential fees involved, GST, property transfer tax, what to look for in contracts. Can you reassign an assignment? Lots of fun stuff here. Assignments are, I'll start off and say, assignments are quite complex contracts. They differ from a normal contract of purchase and sale, and it is extremely important if you are looking to buy or sell an assignment, make sure that you have an experienced realtor working on your behalf because there is a lot to know with assignments. So that being said, we have dealt with a lot, so definitely reach out to us if you're looking to buy or sell your assignment. And let's get into it.
One of the biggest differences when you look at an assignment contract is the wording is no longer buyer or seller. In a typical contract, that makes total sense. In an assignment contract, you have an assignee and an assignor, and you need to know the difference between those two. The assignee is the person that is buying the contract from the assignor.
Yes, and that's a good point to make. And so in a typical contract of purchase and sale, you will have a buyer and seller. Those will be the two points of contact for the contract. And with an assignment, you have an assignor and an assignee. So that being said, let's talk about what an assignment is. So an assignment is when you assign your contract of purchase and sale. A lot of the times this is in pre-sale, but it's not always pre-sale. There are times when you assign a standard contract of purchase and sale on a resale property. But for this episode, we're going to be mostly talking about pre-sale assignments. So a pre-sale assignment is, let's say, for example, CJ, you're a client of mine, and we go into a pre-sale center and we purchase a pre-sale condo.
Awesome.
Okay. You're excited.
Super excited.
The development is going to complete in, they say, 3 to 5 years, estimated completion time.
Perfect.
Okay. So we buy this, and then we wait, 2 years goes by and you've seen some appreciation, for example. Let's say the market's gone up in those 2 years. You call me and you say, Garry, things have changed for my family. We're going to look at a townhouse now. We don't necessarily want this condo. Is there any way that we can assign this contract? And of course I'll say, yeah, certainly. Let me take a look at the contract of purchase and sale. When you go to purchase a pre-sale, there will be a stipulation in the contract regarding assignments. Now, this is extremely important that your realtor goes over those stipulations with you right away. There is a number of things to look at when you purchase a pre-sale property of any sorts. There's a number of things you want to look at in the contract. That will be a whole nother podcast itself. For this podcast, we're just going to be talking about the assignment portion of it. Tune into our other podcast regarding pre-sales, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of pre-sale contracts. So at this point, we would have already gone over the stipulations of an assignment. So I say, yeah, CJ, no problem. We can assign it. We negotiated at the time of the pre-sale that the assignment fee is going to be $500. So someone will have to pay the $500 assignment fee.
Awesome.
But we do have the ability to potentially assign this. Now, keep in mind, every assignment will require developer, what's the word I'm looking for?
Consent.
Developer consent, correct. So we can assign it. Usually what we have to do is we have to send a request to the developer saying, hey, we want to assign this contract, and we will require assent. A lot of the times they'll say, yeah, no problem, you can assign it. We'll require this information from the new buyer, and they'll give us permission, which is basically a form for us to advertise it on MLS and resell the property.
So is there a situation, Garry, where the developer wouldn't give their
consent?
Give their consent for
Yes,
assignment?
and we've personally had that happen to our clients before. Sometimes it's the case where they haven't sold out the remainder of the development. If there's still units remaining, a lot of the times they won't give you consent to sell an assignment property, or perhaps it's getting a little bit closer to completion, and they also won't allow any assignments at that point. So we have seen developers that did not consent to assignments. So you have to read carefully how it is worded in the new development contract.
Yeah,
Okay.
in the original contract of purchase and sale, that's where you really have to look at the nitty-gritty of whether or not the developer will allow, if it's a dollar amount or a percentage amount of the original purchase price.
What was
So-
we recently had one that the wording was that the developer may not arbitrarily withhold consent
Right.
to assign, and basically they used that and did not allow us to assign it. So you really have to know what the wording is, and that's again where a experienced realtor will help you on a pre-sale side as well as a lawyer. Make sure you use all those tools that you can when purchasing, so you know the ins and outs of the contract. So CJ, we've already gone over this. The assignment fee is $500.
Okay.
And we're gonna assign it. We get permission from the developer. They gave us permission to assign it on these terms. Perhaps they want that assignment amount paid up front. Perhaps they want it paid upon subject removal. Perhaps they want it paid whenever. But we've agreed to these terms with the developer. So we list it for sale on the MLS. Okay. Now, another realtor may send it to their clients to purchase the assignment. So this is where an assignment, you can be on both ends. You can be on the sales side of it, which CJ is, but you can also be on the buying side of it. So Donna might come on the other end and say, hey, I've been looking for an investment property, something that's 2 years out from completing. What do we have? If the new development inventory is low at that time, perhaps you'd be looking at buying an assignment. And the good thing with assignment is there could be a lot of different times when these projects are going to complete. Some might be 6 months out, some might still be 3 years out. It's just basically another option to go do for pre-sale. So then Donna can come along. She has her own realtor. They can make their offer to purchase this assignment. So this comes back to my original question. What is an assignment? An assignment is when you're assigning your rights of your contract to another person.
So my original contract with the developer to buy the condo unit. Now, like you said, my family situation has changed. Now I want the townhouse, so I'm getting out of my contract, and Donna will take it over.
No, I wouldn't use the word getting out.
That's a
You're
good
definitely
point.
not getting out.
That's a big misconception,
Yeah.
and we're going to jump on that point right now, is because you don't actually get out of your contract. So you as the assignor, the person who is selling the condo, will still be obligated to complete if the person you assign it to does not complete. So that is a really important thing for people to keep into consideration, is that you don't actually get completely off the hook. If that person you assign it to does not complete for some reason on the deal, of course, there'll be a ton of legalities that'll go along with that, but you will be obligated to complete as the original purchaser.
So I buy the original pre-sale unit. Donna takes the assignment. She, for whatever reason, can't complete. Then the liability comes back to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
we'll go back to the scenario. So Donna comes along. She buys the assignment. So Donna, you're represented by John Doe, realtor. Of course, I'm representing CJ. I can't represent you. So what are some typical things that, Donna is actually a licensed realtor as well on my team, so she does know the things that you should be looking for in an assignment contract. So what are some things that you as the buyer / realtor in this situation, what are some things that you would be looking at to consider in that assignment, purchase, and sale contract?
So if I was
You're the buyer.
I'm the buyer, so I'm buying this contract.
So you're the assignee as the buyer.
I would be looking at the difference in price from the original contract to the assignment price, because there is like some GST payable there, so you'd want to kind of do your numbers. There is developer's consent. Definitely have a look at the original contract. You'd want to know, for example, did the original buyer pay $20,000 worth of upgrades? Because you're also going to be on the hook for those upgrades.
I think the number one thing that you have to just be aware of is you're not only purchasing CJ's contract, but you're purchasing all of the upgrades that they did as well. You're purchasing the color scheme that they wanted. You're purchasing the number of parking stalls that they purchased. You're purchasing their storage locker, their bike locker.
Right.
Literally everything that was put on paper with that pre-sale, you are purchasing.
Yeah,
So
everything with a dollar value. You're
Everything
on
with
the
a dollar
hook
value.
for
So
it,
if I buy the original pre-sale, then I upgrade the carpet to laminate in the bedrooms. I buy an extra parking stall. I add air conditioning. then Donna, as the assignee, she has to pay for all of
Even
that.
if the building hasn't been built, I believe that you can't change that.
Not
You
usually.
have to
Yeah.
buy
Yeah.
what the original person
It's not as
purchased.
common that you have the
Yeah.
ability to change that kind of stuff. Like CJ,
Yeah.
when he originally purchased it as an original purchaser, he got to pick he got to pick what color tones he wanted. He got to pick what upgrades he wanted. Now you, as the purchaser of that assignment, you don't have necessarily the options to pick whatever color scheme you want or whatnot. You're buying what CJ thought
Right.
was
I'm
the
buying
look.
somebody else's
So
vision of this property.
This is really
Yeah.
important. If you're on the buying side of an assignment, you got to make sure that you know what color scheme it was, how many parking stalls were purchased, how many storage lockers were purchased, all of that stuff. And you might want to look back at their website and see what it looks like, because don't forget, a lot of the times when you're purchasing an assignment, the sales center's closed. So you only have basically their little pamphlet and maybe their color palettes
Yeah.
or their artist renderings to go off of what you think it's going to look like. So moving forward, I'm going to be devil's advocate here. I'm going to be Donna's realtor as well. Although this is not a real life situation, because if I'm representing CJ, I can't represent Donna. But I'm representing Donna too on the buying side. So some things that we're going to want Donna to put in as the buyer of an assignment is we're going to go through the contract and basically go over the ins and outs of it and what you should look for and what you should or might want to consider including when you are purchasing an assignment contract. So of course, CJ, he's got me to list it. We've got it on the MLS. We've got an offer here from Donna. I'm representing Donna, playing devil's advocate here. And I'm preparing an offer for Donna to purchase this assignment. So Donna went over a couple things that she might look at as a realtor and a buyer. And we're going to go over a few things that you might want to be aware of when purchasing an assignment. So for one, we already said that it's a different contract of purchase and sale than a resale one. It's an assignment contract of purchase and sale.
Right.
A little bit more complex. It might look like a different language if you've never seen one before, right? If you haven't navigated your way through one, make sure you have a experienced realtor and make sure you engage with the proper people when doing this transaction, including mortgage brokers, lawyers, and accountants. We're going to go over that shortly here. So in the offer, you got to consider what the offer price is going to be. Of course, that's one thing that you're going to want to decide, and that's where your realtor will help you look at previous sales, look at what other new developments are currently selling for, similar products in the area, stuff like that, and you're going to determine what a good offer price might be, okay? Then we're going to talk about the deposit. Now, this is where things can get pretty confusing, because with a normal resale property, basically the process is you make an offer, you have your subjects. If you're satisfied with your subjects, you remove them, and you put that deposit to get held in trust at the brokerage, right? That's pretty run-of-the-mill with everyday resale products.
And that deposit can be around 5%.
It could be as low as 5%.
Yeah.
You know what? I see anywhere from 3 to 5% and more.
Right.
So if you're a first-time home buyer buying with 5% down, that wouldn't be unusual. Now, when we get into the assignment part of it, this is where it might get a little bit confusing, because 5% might not cut it in an
Very
assignment.
rarely in a development.
So let's say, for example, CJ, who purchased the original brand new build.
Yeah, I put a bigger down payment down.
Well, let's say you put down 15%, because
Yeah.
a lot of new developments require anywhere from 5 to 15%.
Yep.
So they might require 5% upon your 7-day rescission period. They might require another 5% 6 months later, then another 5% after that. So let's say you put 5%. Let's say you put 15% down, okay? And let's say, for example, it's a $500,000 property. So that would be $75,000, right?
Good
Quick math.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was looking for someone to compliment me on that. Quick math guy. So that would be $75,000 deposit. So that's a pretty decent sized deposit for a $500,000 purchase, right? So you've put that down. That cash is with the developer's lawyer already.
It's out
They
of my
have
pocket.
it, but you've already put that towards a purchase price, right? Okay. So now we have Donna here. Donna is a first-time home buyer, and she's wanting to buy one. She's renting right now, so she doesn't necessarily care when it completes, because we know that completion date is not always what they say it's going to be. We'll talk about that in a little bit here, though. She's renting right now, and she has 5% to put down, to buy.
Yeah.
So honestly, that might not be an assignment, but an assignment might not be the best option for you. Okay, because a lot of the times there's been more than 5% put down. However, it depends on market conditions. You know, if stuff's pretty slow,
that might be an attractive offer to me because at least I get some of my original $75,000 back. But in a hotter market, then I'd want my full $75,000 back, and I would tell
Exactly.
sorry, Donna, first-time home buyer, I need more deposit.
Exactly. You know, at the end of the day, you got to look out for yourself. Donna's going to look out for herself because she's the buyer. But this podcast is tailored mostly towards the buyer in this state because the seller, I mean, we could do a whole nother podcast on that one. But for this one, it's tailored around the buying side. So Donna, she offers on CJ's place. They say, hey, you know, we've put $75,000 down. We want that deposit back, you know, because it doesn't complete for 2 more years. He doesn't want this. The seller doesn't want the money tied up in this place for another 3 years. They want to get that money out so they can buy another place, the townhouse that they wanted to upsize to. So at that point, it doesn't necessarily work for Donna because the seller's not willing to take it because it's not the 15%. However, let's say Donna talks to friends and family, comes up with the 15% deposit, the $75,000. Okay?
Much more attractive now.
Much more attractive for you as the seller. So now we've got the deposit amount. So now we're going forward with the offer. We're going to include a number of subjects in the offer, Donna. Do you remember what subjects we'd include in the offer?
We would have your typical financing. I mean, you can still have that in regardless of it being an assignment.
Yeah.
Subject to developer's consent, because without that, you can't purchase. Reviewing the original contract. One of the most important subjects that you would have in the assignment contract is getting legal, professional, and accounting advice. I can't say that strongly enough. The most important thing. And then we would have reviewing the developer's disclosure statement, because that's a lot of information as well on the development that you're buying into. Whether you're an assignment or buying a pre-sale, it's something that you definitely have to look at. So it's good to have all of those subjects.
Exactly, and a good point was not only are you buying the contract, with the original contract is attached a developer's disclosure statement with tons of really important details involved in that. We're not going to go over all of the details in this podcast. We'll go over it in the pre-sale purchasing podcast, but keep in mind when you're buying an assignment, you're buying the contract, all the updates, plus the developers, any attachments to that original contract, which could be the developer's disclosure statement, strata plan, all that kind of stuff. So, Donna, as your realtor, you're right. I recommend that you include all of those subjects at the very least to protect you as the buyer. Financing, because, hey, it'd be a good idea to talk to a mortgage broker or a mortgage specialist just to make sure that when the place completes, you know, whether you have to plan to be able to be approved for it or what you should and shouldn't do in that time if you are pre-approved for it. Let's say you're pre-approved.
Don't buy a big $20,000 car.
Don't go buy a car. Don't go
fancy vacation.
You know, don't go blow the down payment money, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So one subject one, reviewing and approving financing. So you'll discuss that with your mortgage broker, get pre-approved before even making the offer. Then your mortgage broker will be able to give you the go-ahead prior to subject removal. Subject to obtaining developer's consent, because of course without that the deal cannot go firm. Reviewing and approving the original contract. So again, that's going over the upgrades.
Yeah, the contract that I originally made with the developer.
You originally made with the developer. So we're going to go over the upgrades, whether it's laminate, parking, storage, color scheme, all that kinds of stuff, all the ins and outs of it. Because don't forget, you're buying everything of the original contract, all the terms and conditions. So you want to make sure you go over that with a fine-tooth comb. Legal, professional, and accounting advice, as Donna said, one of the most important subjects because, again, assignments can tend to be a little bit complex. You might have questions about your deposit, the risks associated with your deposit, what it all means. Engage with a lawyer, have that 15 to 20-minute conversation. Just let them know that you're going to be using them for the conveyancing of it when it eventually completes. Majority of the times, at least our lawyer is happy to jump on the phone with you and have a 15, 20-minute conversation to answer any questions you might have or concerns with that original contract or the assignment contract. Again, the assignment contract can be pretty complex, so we do recommend you get legal advice on matters that you might find confusing of it, just because there is a lot of points in it and also a lot of numbers, okay? And reviewing the developer's disclosure statement. In the developer's disclosure statement, you're going to be able to confirm approximate square footage, bylaws, rules, lots of stuff. You'll have information on the developer. Again, we'll go over this in the pre-sale podcast, but there's lots of information in the developer's disclosure statement. So we're going to include those standard subjects that I'd say in the contract, and we're going to talk about now the deposit, because in the assignment contract, when you're purchasing it, there is 3 different options for how the deposit's going to get distributed. Okay. Now, Donna, as the buyer, the safest option for her would be for that deposit to get held in trust at your realtor's brokerage.
Correct.
Because we'll know where it is at all times. We know it's not going anywhere. It's safe. And upon completion, it'll get released and distributed, as per contract. Okay. I would say that is the best way to have the deposit handled.
For the buyer.
For the buyer. Now, let's talk about for the seller. So we'll probably make that offer with it being held in trust, the deposit. $75,000. It's no pennies. This is a lot of money. Now, CJ, him as the seller, of course, he wants to purchase a townhouse. He wants to upsize. His circumstances have changed. He needs that money.
I want that $75,000 in my pocket.
You want that $75,000 in your pocket to be able to purchase a townhouse. So, of course, me representing you as your realtor, we're going to counter Donna's offer, and we're going to say, hey, we want that deposit to be released directly to the seller or the assignor. Okay? Seller and the assignor, don't forget they're the same people. And then, of course, that's when Donna's going to have to get legal advice. And this depends, and it really depends on market conditions as well. Because in a really slow market, I might say to CJ, hey, it's highly unlikely anybody's going to be sending you a deposit directly to you. It's highly risky for the buyer.
Yep.
There's a lot of other product out there. They're just going to jump on a place where they'll take the deposit in trust.
Because if the assignee were to give the deposit directly to the seller, and then for whatever reason they couldn't complete, then I could keep that deposit.
Correct. Basically, the rule of thumb is once you, and I would negotiate it for you that deposit's non-refundable. So the second it changes hands from Donna to you,
I'm not giving it back.
You're not giving it back, nor do you have to give it back, right? That is per contract. Now, keep in mind, all of these things can be negotiated. So again, that's why it's important and imperative that you have an experienced realtor who's dealt with assignments, that's able to instruct and give you the expert advice you need for your whatever works best for your situation, right? So let's use a deposit direct to seller example, right? Okay. So in a busy market, we saw this a lot, whereas the seller or the assignor would want their full deposit back in cash, non-refundable. So that circumstance would be Donna cuts a check for $75,000 directly to CJ. When she's purchasing the place, it's non-refundable. It gets given to CJ, non-refundable. Well, Donna, I better hope that you complete on that deal, because if you don't complete on that deal, that $75,000 is up in the wind. It's gone. It's non-refundable. So we see this happen a lot in a really busy market. Again, it's a risky thing to do because it's non-refundable, and of course, who knows what's going to happen if the completion is far out, right? But we do see it a lot, and that's when it's imperative that you get legal advice. You talk to your lawyer. Hey, what are my repercussions? What's the ins and outs of this? But the basic part of it is that if you don't complete or something happens for some reason, that $75,000 is non-refundable back to you. Okay, so let's just use an easy way. Let's just say the $75,000 is put in trust until completion, right? We'll see this if completion's happening in 2, 3, 4 months. This circumstance is more common. When completion is 1, 2, 3 years out, then a lot of the times they'll want that deposit direct to seller. Okay, but it depends what seller's circumstances is, what's a buyer's circumstances. It all depends, right? Every situation is different. But let's say, for example, the completion is 3 months out, it goes in trust. Okay, so Donna, we're okay with that. We've got our subject clauses. We've done the due diligence. You've talked to a lawyer. We've gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb. We've gone through the original contract. We've gone through the developer's disclosure. You've talked to your mortgage broker. Everything's fine. We're prepared to remove subjects. Oh, one last thing. Have you talked to your accountant?
You need to.
You need to.
You definitely need to.
That's really important because you might want to talk to your accountant about GST. GST is really important to consider when buying an assignment. A lot of people forget that depending on what your use is for the property, GST and property transfer tax can be applicable on the assignment as well. And both of those things can be negotiated with who's going to pay it. Okay? So again, that's why it's so important to have a realtor that knows these things, because I've seen GST being paid by the assignor, I've seen GST being paid by the assignee. Generally what we see is the assignor, so the person that's selling the property, has to pay GST on their what's called the lift. And that's the amount of money that the place is sold for over their original purchase price.
So the profit, basically.
Yeah.
So if I originally bought the condo for $500K and then now I'm selling it to Donna for $600K, then I would have to pay the GST on that $100,000 of my profit.
And then I would be paying the GST
on the 500. That's correct. So, but I've also seen it negotiated where the person that's purchasing the assignment pays GST on everything. So it's one of those things that can be negotiated, but it's imperative that it is clear who pays what on the contract to purchase and sale. The last thing we want to see is somebody getting to the lawyer and saying, oh, I didn't know I had to pay, I thought I only had to pay GST on the lift, the profit, which is maybe you have to pay GST on the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a difference of $5,000 to $30,000.
Correct, and that can be a big amount. So make sure that you're aware. If you are purchasing it for personal use, of course, you may be eligible for a property transfer tax exemption. However, we find a lot of the times that people are purchasing it as an investment. If you're not purchasing it as your principal residence, you may have to pay property transfer tax, which can be, again, a substantial amount. It's 1% on the first 200,000, 2% on every 100,000 after that. So that amount adds up fairly quickly. So GST, don't forget about GST. Make sure the GST is sorted out before you remove subjects. As a buyer, make sure that you're aware you're going to have to pay GST, and if you're not using it for personal use, you're going to have to pay property transfer tax as well. Okay, so those are some things to keep in mind. Okay, so now, Donna, we've done our due diligence. We know what's happening with GST, PTT, all that stuff. Of course, we did not include an inspection subject. You might have noticed that. We didn't include subject to obtaining and approving an inspection. Reason being is because
it's not built yet.
Not built yet. A lot of the times we don't have access. A lot of times
nothing to look at.
It might only be, a piece of dirt right now.
Right.
So, of course, we can't do an inspection. You may be able to get a quote on property insurance, so that might be another subject that you might want to include. You may be able to get a quote on property insurance, but of course, depending on how far down the road it is, that quote might change.
Yeah.
But those are some things to consider. Okay, now let's say all went well. We're going to remove our subjects, and we've got the developer's consent as well. That was one of the subjects as well. They signed off on it. So now, basically, at this point, you've purchased the entire contract. You are the new owner of Stratalot, so-and-so.
So what if that all happens, and then the same thing happens to me that happened to CJ? It's still 2 or 3 years out, and my circumstances change. Can I reassign my assignment?
So that is a great question, and that is a very complex question, because sometimes you may, sometimes you may not. So again, it comes down to the developer's consent. I'll go off of a personal situation that I had. I bought in an assignment and I wanted to reassign it. The market went up and I wanted to go in a different direction. Developer would not let me or consent to me to reassign it. So the long or the short of that question is, yes, you may be able to, but no, you also might not be able to. And I'm glad you actually asked that, because the number one thing that we'll tell to clients when they say that they want to either purchase a pre-sale or purchase an assignment, we'll say always purchase it with the intent that you're going to complete on it.
Right.
Because if you're purchasing purely off speculation, we don't know what's going to happen in the market 6 months from now, a year from now, 4 years from now. Yeah. At the time, we'll negotiate a great assignment fee and assignment deal for you. But again, it's not necessarily up to us. Sometimes it's up to the developer. If they say no, you have to know that you still have to complete on it.
Right.
Right? So that's what we always say. We always say purchase with the intent to complete, and if the time comes and we can assign it, great. But we never want someone coming back to us and saying, "Oh, I only bought this as if the market would go up so that we can resell it." Well, yeah, sure.
But there's no
great.
guarantee that
there's
you
no
can do
guarantee
that.
of that
So,
at
yeah.
all. So Always buy with the intent to complete. There's always going to be speculators. Hey, sometimes speculators lose. Sometimes they win. Always buy it with the intent that you're going to complete on it.
So Gary, what happens if I were to buy the assignment at our, let's say, 500,000, and then in the 2 years or 1 year, whatever period of time, the market actually depreciates, and then instead of me selling it to Donna for 600,000, what if I can only get 450 for it?
So again, that will have to be developers' consent. Do they want sales showing up that low? Are they going to approve?
It doesn't look good for them.
Are they going to approve a sale that low? You know, at that time they might not approve a sale at that point. You know, because then they're showing an automatic loss on their places, and perhaps you're a desperate seller and you're trying to dump the place. So I couldn't see a developer allowing that. But if that does come to it, you're going to have to make up the loss in value, and it's a risky thing to do. You know, before a developer would allow it to do that, you would have to exercise all options to be able to complete on it. And you know, the one thing that you can consider or to fall back on is if you're going to be putting 20% down or more, you know, you can always go to private financing usually, and maybe they require 30%. But I would never recommend not completing on a deal in real estate ever, because there are heavy implications involved, and it does become a legal matter, and it's never pretty. So never prepare not to complete. So the market goes down, and by the time you complete on it, you're at a loss. You know, market fluctuates. Who knows? Complete on it. Hold it if you can. Rent it if you can. You know, who knows? Maybe the next month the market will go up. The market changes so frequently. But I'm actually glad you brought that up, because, hey, let's say, for example, the market is on the little bit of the downwards, and you bought an assignment and you've got pre-approved, but you still have to get an appraisal. So this is why it's extremely important that you speak with your mortgage broker or your bank professional substantially prior to the condo or your pre-sale completing, because they can lock in specific rates for an extended period of time. Different lenders can lock in rates for different amount of times, and they can extend that pre-approval for extended periods of time. So make sure that if you're kind of in a downward market and you did purchase an assignment, that you're in very close contact with your bank or mortgage professional.
Because the last thing you'd want is your interest rate to go up and then your property value to go down, and then that would really hurt your qualification. But if, like you said, the bank could hold that rate, then it could potentially save you.
Exactly. Really good point. I think we've covered most.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Yeah. So we've just kind of scratched the surface of assignments. Hopefully this shines light on what purchasing an assignment might look like, and some points that you have to consider if purchasing an assignment is for you. Of course, if you're interested in purchasing one, reach out to a professional. My team and I have dealt with tons of assignments. We know the ins and outs of assignment contracts, and we would be happy to help. So thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Take care.